Welcome to the Wounded Leadership Podcast, Stories from the Wounded. I'm your host, Dr. Matthew Tanner, the founder of Wounded Leadership Ministries. You know, the calling to shepherd God's church brings some of life's greatest joys and adventures. Yet this calling also comes with profound challenges. Many church leaders face those challenges in silence. Nearly every pastor will experience the pain of unjustified termination or forced resignation at least once in their ministry journey. On this podcast, we create a safe place where wounded leaders can share their stories, find community, and discover pathways toward healing and a renewed purpose. Each episode will bring honest conversations with those who have walked through the valley of ministerial suffering and emerged stronger on the other side. Whether you're currently serving in ministry, recovering from church trauma yourself, or simply want to better understand the challenges that are facing today's church leaders, this podcast is for you. It will offer biblical wisdom, practical strategies, and genuine hope. Now let's begin today's conversation. Welcome to the Wounded Leadership Podcast, Stories from the Wounded. I'm excited about our guest today, my good friend, Nathan Munger. Nathan, I'm just going to have you introduce yourself, and then I know you've been a wounded pastor and are a healing pastor, so let you introduce yourself. You could just say what you want to say about yourself.
Yeah.
That way, if anybody complains, it's on you.
It's all on me.
And then we'll just dive into your story.
Well, should we start off by letting know that I am Assemblies of God Pentecostal, so just like the full.
That's okay. I know even though I'm Southern Baptist background, wounded leadership is I'm going to say it non-denominational. It goes across denominations.
I am pretty much across the denominations. I was raised Luther Costal.
I like that.
Became friends with many Baptists.
We're worshiping
the Baptist Costal is the same through there.
We're worshiping a lot the same. Y'all are just happier about it. So introduce yourself.
Some clap more. No, my name's Nathan Munger. I am an associate pastor over at Tabernacle of Praise here in Hannibal, and have been for 10 years now. But it's how I got back to Hannibal, I think, is what the real story is.
That's where it all begins.
Yeah, sort of.
This podcast is Stories from the Wounded, so that's obviously why we're here, and you graciously agreed to tell your story. So start us where you want to start us.
I actually started in ministry later in life, and after a career in human resources, but God began to direct my path a different way. And once my wife and I both got on that same page, God began to open doors. And it actually opened up here in Hannibal, where I'm originally from as well. Moved around the country several times, but kept being called back here. Well, I never really knew how I was going to get into ministry, and God just ended up opening doors that no one else could. And became associate pastor at Tabernacle Praise, became their youth pastor. I was there for many years. We then went and youth pastored in St. Peters, Missouri, and was there almost 6 years. God began to change my heart in the direction of senior pastoring. We began looking for a church home, and I've never really put the resumes out there. God's just opened doors. Well, God opened this door for this little church, had great recommendations. The person that was pastoring there I knew very well and was very influential in my wife and I in going into the ministry as well. And so we had a lot of trust for the situation. The previous pastor was there 40 years, and he passed away while serving as pastor.
Wow.
Now, normally that's a red flag, to go and pastor a church that had been led by someone for 40 years.
Yeah. Why do you say that?
Because there is a mindset that is the church is really kind of built around an individual at that point. And not in all cases, but in most typical situations, the church begins to be molded more around that individual.
Yeah.
So the red flags were up, but they went 3 years with an interim pastor, and the pastor that was there was the one that I trusted immensely. Had several other pastors that were familiar that gave great recommendations on the church. And then when we went and interviewed, it really was not just a good fit, a great fit, and really felt God's calling us to that place. Went there, and we also have been around pastoral ministries long enough to know that you don't go into a church and make changes. You don't go into a church. I mean, it's the first year, I forget who says it, but the first year you're there, just spend that first year loving on the people.
Yeah, getting to know your people.
The second year, you just love on them and begin to share vision, a little more vision. That third year, you can then begin to take steps into initiating that vision a little bit more.
Yeah.
So that first year, that's exactly what we did. And I had 4 pastors that I really kept on my speed dial and made sure I had good, wise counsel from them. One was the superintendent of that district, very large district, and I had his number on speed dial, and he answered.
Yeah.
And several others that I just really trusted. And going through the process of pastoring the church, it's really kind of neat, and you can't really explain it to somebody who has not experienced it, but there's a supernatural level of love that God puts in you. The moment we went into that place, I had an absolute love for those people, the people that were there.
And let me guess, that's going to factor in later.
Oh, it always does.
Yeah.
Of course it does.
As we progress in this story.
You know, the love that is just, it wasn't one that normally you get to know people and that love grows. This was just there immediately. And when they were going through heartbreaks, I went through heartbreaks with them. My wife as well, and made some very good relationships with them. While we were there, we began to see new families coming and being a part of the church. And the community was a pretty small community, but more of one of those bedroom communities. A lot of people worked outside of the area, but just solid group of people there and believers. And God began to do things within the individuals there. Had young people coming, had my own children were young, and young kids, kind of spur on more excitement too. And so we had more, families of young kids coming. During all of this, there was a lot of things that took place over years that I did not know about. And they were kept secret. And I would even say they were sins of previous leadership.
Okay.
That were kept secret.
Was this the long-term guy or the leaders?
Yeah, there were some things that he did that were just, without going into details and through there, it was a lot of things that probably would have changed our opinion or direction if we had known about. A lot of financial things that were there. The church was very well off financially. And so, but a lot of it was because of that. When he passed away, a lot of these things came to light. And then they had family members that thought the church owed them more.
Huh.
And what I also didn't know is one of the family members that was leading that charge and was the most upset about that was also the church secretary. That was never informed to me.
Yeah, it's interesting in how the search process, there's a lot of those things unsaid.
Yeah.
So how long have you been there at this point when all this comes out?
About 6 months. When
So pretty early.
when it's well, actually, I didn't find out the true story until after we resigned, or when we resigned. That was a leading cause for us. But all these things began to take place. For my life, I've always said, God, I want to be like a Daniel.
Careful what you pray for.
I know, but I want to be like a Daniel. And if you look at Daniel was so open, so transparent. He stood for what he believed in.
Mm-hmm.
They had to go to the point where they had to make up things.
Well, for sure.
And eventually that's what ended up taking place, is a lot of this going behind my back without me ever knowing. There was a fight trying to get more of that control. And it came to a point at one that this one individual then pulled the entire worship team and had them not show up for one Sunday.
Nice.
And so I show up on a Sunday morning, and there is
whole
no
worship team.
Yeah, they're gone.
Yeah.
And I had one individual come up to me and say, I think you need to know what's going on. And he told me. I was like, okay. So at that point in time, and this is a Sunday morning.
Of course.
I go outside, I call our superintendent, and he actually answered. And he was just as angry at the situation, probably not more than I was.
Yeah.
But we just prayed, and I went into the church, and one of our deacons who he could sing. So I said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to pull a couple videos from YouTube. We're going to play those videos on YouTube, and we're going to worship with that. And that's exactly what we did.
Wow.
And I preached, and at the end of it, we got through it. My wife looked at me and she said, she's like, you just made it through one of the hardest services you'll probably ever have to do. And God was still in it. And I'm like, yep. So the very next week, I started developing a new worship team.
So
and
they were just completely done.
they also didn't realize that I could lead worship. And so I
Yeah.
broke my guitar out
Like,
and
we're going to do this.
started putting together a team. And the following week, we had a worship team up there. And over the coming weeks, we actually had a team that was, I wouldn't say well polished, but, they were worshipers. And it was good. And that made these other people very angry.
Oh, I'm sure.
The other people actually, when all this happened, they stopped coming to church. And I had one individual that was a deacon on my board, and he was also in trying to set up private meetings without me, which is a big no-no.
Yeah.
He eventually resigned, and he told me that he was going to be withholding all of his tithing.
It's a common thing we hear is like they use that as leverage.
But remember, I told you the church was very financially well off. And so my argument to him was, I'm sorry to hear that, because you're not stealing from me. You're stealing from God.
Right.
But that's between you and God, and he'll deal with you. But in the meantime, just so you're aware, the church can take up not another single offering for more than 3 years and still cover every single bill.
We can weather this.
Yeah. So that happened.
Mm.
When that family left, the church started to grow.
Oh, wow.
Which was really crazy. And then we had someone tell us that they said, these are people from, and remember, this is a small community. This individual said, as long as that family's there, they will never step place in that church. If they're not there, they'll come. We had a friend of mine that was a family evangelist, came in and did a family crusade. And we did a lot of stuff for the community, had a big fair. In that 1 week, we had 5 new families start to come to church. And
from the removal of one catalyst.
Yeah, just in that process. But the family that had left, they also were very influential in the community and began to use their influence to negatively impact my other deacons, including threatening their livelihoods.
Oh, nice.
And at the end of that week, the revival service and everything happened. Remember, it was a Thursday. I had a meeting actually with our superintendent and met with him. And while I was standing there talking to him, I received a call from our district presbyter. And he then told me, he's like, that my board was asking for my resignation.
Even though things around you seem to be going well and growing, now all of a sudden the board is asking. So he got to the board and used it against you, basically. Yep.
It was pure evil.
For sure.
And so I told our superintendent, and he was ready to come back and fight the charge with me.
So what was
the next day? I met with our presbyter and assistant presbyter. They were both there, and that's in the conversation, because my wife and I, we're set to fight. I had people within the church coming up to us and say, "Don't you leave?
Don't leave. Yeah, don't go anywhere."
And again, this was a very, very small group of people that were putting up this problem. 80-90% of the church was uninvolved and were right there with us. But after meeting with the presbyters and finding out a lot of these past indiscretions, and even dealing with this church secretary, she had stopped showing up work, so I was actually in the process of terminating her. That just kind of spurred on the battle,
because she began to fight against that.
Yeah, it was very ugly. But again, the accusations that they're making towards us were completely unfounded.
Oh, for sure.
And also, being a human resources person in the past, I also keep really good records, right. And so every single thing that they tried to come at me against, I had a whole lot of evidence.
But it seems like they're not worried about facts or figures. They're worried about influence. No, so they knew when one bullet didn't hit its mark, then they would just try something else. In the research in the book, we call it the mobbing effect, where they just continue to put pressure.
Well, I call it the country club church effect, because that is what that church had become over the years without me ever knowing.
Right.
It was a very influent group, and it was, they felt that way, and they did not want the outsiders through there. And just us being there, not even doing anything,
Just your presence alone.
just our
was
presence
against the
created so
grain.
much of a change that, God began to do things. People began to come in, and that just really upset me. I even had them one time come to me and complain because when I would release the kids to go down to kids' church, that my children would leave the aisle and they would run to the back to go back to kids' church.
Oh, the shame.
And they were upset. It's like, there should not be children running in church. I was like, I understand what you're saying, but those kids are excited for church, and their
Yeah.
excitement is in their feet, and they're running through there. So
What are
I'm
they
not
hurt-
going to
yeah,
stop
What are they
them.
hurting?
I'm not going to stop them from running back in the
Right.
aisle. So after meeting with the presbyters and getting advice, I had one of my pastor people that was right there helping me out.
Mm.
He gave me the advice and said, that's fine. It's like, if they're so worried about all their money, then you make them pay for you to leave. So we did. So I was like, well, we're going to find out exactly how
serious
bad
are
you
they?
want us to leave. And so we'll leave. And we said for this. And some people might get upset. That's not a God thing. I'm like, you know what? That showed where their
heart was.
Their heart was.
Yeah.
And they did not want me to be there for any more services.
So it was immediate.
It was immediate.
Wow.
They then, that Sunday morning, I find out from other people that they reported to the congregation that we were resigning due to family issues.
So they wouldn't even tell the truth on that.
No. When we went back up there Monday, and I went there with my current pastor now that I serve under and several others to begin to clean our stuff out, my board there then began to meet with me, and the absolute anger, I would even call it demonic anger from one of our deacons in giving me that check. It was hateful.
Just the anger, the venom that comes out of it.
It was pure venom. And it really began to show a whole lot.
Yeah.
We talk about the wounds, and that's a lot through there. Now, the people that were there still to this day, I love, and there's several that still will occasionally keep in contact or check in with us. And there's some that, just godly people. And that church has gone through a whole lot of process.
Yeah.
I went through many years even of going through the healing process. And I think we always know that, forgiveness is not a one-time event. It's an every moment you think about it event.
Describe that process, because that's what we're looking to discover through these stories is, what is that healing process? What did it look like?
So part of it, and this was the craziest thing. So that first Sunday, the Sunday that they did not want us there, we didn't want to go to church. The last thing my wife and I wanted to do was go to church. And so we had come back to Hannibal. This is where my family was. So we had a place to at least, to move to. That Sunday morning, we knew church started at 10. So we left the house at 10:01.
So we don't have to talk to anybody on the way.
So, because we weren't far from church, so it didn't take that long. So we were a few minutes after they started. We wanted our kids to be in there. Several of the kids are already there. We're friends with the people. So we were comfortable with that. We took them up to the kids' church, dropped them off. We then walked around the upstairs part of church that nobody goes to, and slipped around down, and then walked in along the side and snuck in a pew about 3/4 back.
As far from the public as you
didn't want people to see us, didn't want any attention, didn't want anything at all. We just, and in that moment, it's like, okay, we're just gonna worship God.
Yeah, but why do you feel at that moment you have to approach going back to church like that?
I didn't want to answer the questions. A big part of it was feeling ashamed of failure because God sent me to this.
That's a common theme that I find, is that feeling of failure. But yet when you put a story beside the feeling, we've talked about this before, it doesn't add up. And you talk about all the mobbing and all the things that were done to you, yet you still feel like a failure in the process. Yeah. Why is that?
Because in our own mind, we have an idea of what success is.
That's big.
And
it wasn't
being asked to resign
doesn't feel very successful,
and
does it?
Really, it felt like the enemy was winning, and that I was giving the enemy a win. We want to fight the enemy.
Oh, for sure.
But there came a realization And really, when it came down to it, it was our children. If we did not have our kids there with us,
Yeah, I get that.
we would have fought, and the gloves would have came off. We would not have fought
It's like,
fair.
you want to dance? Start the
know,
music.
yeah. So, but because of that, we did not want our children to be dragged through. We did not want our children to ever have their own church wounds. And so we found a very safe place to come back home. It was a spot where they had friends. So the transition was as easy as can be.
Mhm.
They still had a hard time processing it over time, not understanding, but that's just something that we've had to work through. Sitting there with all the people through there, and I'm just the prayers, God, why did this happen? And the thoughts of failure, those thoughts. Looking back now, we did not fail. We were a part of God's process.
How long did it take you to come to that
Years.
Longer than you wanted to?
Yeah, just because we have our own self-doubt but it also, hindsight's 2020, and we don't always see what's taken place.
For sure.
We can see all those steps that took place after us,
Mhm.
that God made it right. That's that first Sunday we sat in there, we snuck in, and the pastor, he knew what we had been going through. So that comes to the end of the worship time, and he stands up to lead the congregation in prayer. That typical transition time.
Yes.
And it was anything but typical, because he then called for my wife and I to come up
Ooh.
in front of everybody.
And you're like trying to hide.
Remember, this was a church that we served for quite a few years as
Yeah.
the youth pastors. And
So
so
they
when
knew?
we left, it was, we weren't ever expecting to come back. The church had been through a lot of problems over the years as well, that we were glad to avoid in that time that we were gone. The pastor that was there, I actually had a big hand in getting him there, which was crazy as well. But he called us up front, and my wife and I both had the exact same thoughts. I want to kill him. His own wife
It was like,
had
what
the
are
thought,
you
it
doing?
was like, oh, what is he doing?
Yeah.
Little did I know, and I should have known, it was purely a God-led thing, because he had the church, and the church was actually pretty small at that time, but he had them come up and pray over us. And
Wow.
just about every single person in that church came up to pray over us. And it still gets me,
For sure.
because the amount of healing that took place in that moment, it was as if, we were touched by Jesus at that moment.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Now, that doesn't mean healing is 100%. There's,
Yeah.
wouldn't that be great?
Well, it'd be, yeah, that'd be nice.
But we also know that God allows us to go through things for us to become better and to learn.
And to rely on him more.
And so there was a huge weight that came off of us in that day, and to know that okay, God still got us in his grips. And since then, we've been able to just continue to feel God's presence in that. Now, our healing story is just a matter of time. Help me forgive them. God, help me forgive them. God, help me forgive them. God, help me forgive them. Because I don't want to pray the prayer of God, get them.
Yeah, I've shared this before. You really would like to pray some Old Testament prayers. May their days be short and their influence
And-
few, or may the
and-
ground open up and swallow them whole.
And I'm
But you
not saying
can't.
that there's not scripturally basis prayers behind that. God has a lot of promises dealing with those type of people, but I have a hard time praying that, not because I don't want to.
Because you're not.
I want
he
to
won't
see
let you.
justice. I want to see it.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, that's not my place. All right. I've let other people pray that. I have let other people pray that. But God, help me forgive them. And over time and over time, the more you pray that prayer, the harder it is to harbor bitterness towards them. Now here we are, over 10 years past. I had what has now become one of my best friends, actually went and became the interim pastor right after me.
Oh wow.
Which was just weird, knowing that,
It's like we
here
can
he is
talk,
over
but not
there.
about that.
Yeah. And I did not share with him what we went through, because I didn't want him to, get ideas about individuals on his own. But he went over, and God did a great work in him. But I will say this much: that church went through a very painful season, because they could not get anybody to come over and pastor there. because of what taken place.
Yeah.
The district was not going to help them because of what.
We're not putting somebody else in there to
No.
go through that.
They ended up getting a pastor that came through, and I think he did a great job. But he came in with bull in China mentality and just started changing. But what were they going to do?
They can't get anybody else at this point.
So
Yeah,
God
dude.
used him to do a lot of that. God also used, from my understanding, used his wife to finally get rid of that church secretary. And she just walked in, saw what she was doing. She said, "You're fired."
You're done.
And that was it. That pastor was there for several years. They now have another pastor that's there as well. And both young families that have gone in there, I can say that church, I think, is in a much better place now. So I don't like the fact that God used me to bring about that change. I really don't. And I'm not going to complain to him, but I am going to say, it's like, really?
You could have used somebody else.
So, but, cause did we have to go down that road? But, whatever. But we're in a place now that I can see where God's used us in helping with the kingdom. God has done a huge difference in our community here in Hannibal. Several of my best friends, I can say, are Baptist ministers, and I'm Pentecostal.
It's good for you.
15 years ago, I don't think that would not be on record.
You don't admit that publicly.
I think we would both, be losing our papers, our credentials, there would be a lot of meetings about that.
Yeah.
But to be able to say that, and kind of the cool thing, what I'm seeing biblically based churches that stand on the word of God are coming closer and closer together. And I love that. So, and I love the fact that we can just give each other a hard time about
of course
the minor differences. Just don't minor in the minors type of thing.
Yeah, but we're healing together. I mean,
absolutely.
That's the cool part about it. Somebody asked me, as I hear your story, it reminds me, I get asked all the time, how do you know you're healed? And I usually, the way I answer that is, I'll let you know when I'm healed. So I'm going to throw that question to you. So, how do you know you're healed in all of this?
I actually mentioned this to you a week or so ago when I was listening to one of your podcasts about the anxiety. The community that we churched isn't that far away from us. Well, just a little bit out of reach, but not that far in relativeness. And so anytime I would travel in a certain direction, the farther I went in that direction,
the worse you get the feeling.
It's so strange.
Yeah.
The closer I would be traveling towards that place, the faster my heart rate would be going. There was even a time we were in a town that's right in the middle between us, and I thought I saw somebody from that church.
Immediately it goes up.
My heart rate was just spiking outside of my chest. I didn't have an Apple Watch at the time, but if I did, it would be,
it would be sending alerts.
EMS may have already been called, type of thing. There was also a time, one of the families that were there, and a lot of those families that were there that were they ended up leaving that church as well. That church had a horrible fallout. Memory serves me correct, more than half of the deacons that were there end up leaving the church after it as well, and they were part of the decision-making process.
Right.
But but there was a time that we were invited to come back up there to visit a family. They had just had a baby. And of course, we wanted to see the baby and welcome that child because we were excited that they had. Driving into that town, I mean, I physically just felt ill. The whole time I was there at their house, physically felt like I just could
all the physiological symptoms are spiking.
Yeah. When we were leaving, I was able to breathe a sigh of relief. And once we hit that city limit side, I could actually start breathing normal breaths and getting out of there. That was within the first year after us leaving.
Well, we underestimate the physical effect that this has on pastors.
Yeah.
I coined the phrase post-traumatic spiritual stress disorder.
Yeah.
Because it has all the same symptoms.
Yep. And my wife, not as much, but I definitely dealt with it. And there was times I told her, I was like, I can't go that direction. I was like, I can't be over
there.
She'd want to go over and eat at certain places. I'm like,
no,
I can't.
Yeah.
Over the years, that of course heals more and more.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that time heals all wounds, type of thing. and then hearing things. The one pastor that went there after us, when that first one, he actually preached a message, and he told the people there that they need to reach out and they need to contact me and they need to apologize. And one of the ladies that still kept in touch with my wife told her, and she said, expect some phone calls.
Yeah, let me guess. How many did you get? Zero.
Not
Of
a
course.
single one.
Of course.
So, okay.
Yeah.
And I knew at the time, and I wasn't expecting it. So I'm like, okay, we're not getting phone calls.
Yeah, I'm not going to wait by the phone.
So several years passed, and that friend of mine that was over there as the interim pastor, he was getting married, and at his wedding, and I'm standing up with him, that one family that was there, and the influential family showed up. And it's weird because over time, every so often, somebody from that area would make their way to Tabernacle, just randomly.
Sitting in the back pew,
And
you're getting up there ready to.
Yeah, I mean, I even had one of my deacons, that I was very close to for while we were there, that really just went off the deep end with it all. Showed up at our church one day, and I'm like, "What do you do?" I was like, I nodded my head to him.
I'm going home.
I went back up. I was leading worship. I was worship pastor there. I led worship, and he sat over off to the side far enough that I didn't have to make direct contact.
You could look the other way.
That was good, So I was able, but it was good. But at this wedding, the father, the patriarch of this one family, he came up to me and he said, "I just need to tell you, I'm sorry." And I said, I forgive you. And he then started, saying things through there. I'm like, no. And I wasn't going to tell him it's all right, that it wasn't wrong. I'm like, no,
it was wrong.
I was
but
like,
I forgive you.
And he said things. I was like, yeah, it was. Yes, you were, but I do forgive you.
Wow.
And left it at that. And that was good.
Mm.
I would not call that a healing moment. It was just a cool moment. But at that point in time, I can say I sat there and I still prayed for them. It was good to see that God had done a lot of work through there. I believe that because of the pure evil that was done, and I don't use that term lightly. It was demonic influence, and the things that I found out, there was the individuals that was the main instigator in all this. Come to find out, the years before that, she was married. And there was another individual in the church that was also married, and they were having an affair.
Oh, wow.
And all during that time, they were still actively working in the church. She was the worship leader, and they divorced each other's family, to get with each other, and nothing was ever done about it. I'm like, I mean, they were absolutely, as sinful as you can be in that. And you have them on the stage.
Yeah. Well, and I think those listening to the podcast that are also wounded leaders, they identify quickly with what you say.
Yeah.
You do see the enemy at work through people doing these things. There's no other explanation to it. So when could you say you found joy in your ministry again? And I know that depends on the week.
So as soon as we left there, we came back to Hannibal, and our pastor now, he had only been at Tabernacle for a year. So he had just gotten there just right before I started, like a month more.
Yeah.
So, but he says, you're on staff with me now. And I'm like, oh, okay. And he goes, no, he's like, you're on staff. He goes, number one, with your resume, there won't be any gaps in time.
Oh, wow.
So that's
huge.
That's a good thing to look for as people look through there. He goes, and we're going to start working you in. And so I was able to start working through there. I love playing guitar. I love being a part of a worship team. Never had a desire to be a worship leader. And that's exactly what I became. But just being able to be active and to see what God is doing, that's that great joy.
Yeah. Because there's someone sitting from the sidelines watching, even though you're active, you're on the sidelines watching God work in other people.
Yeah.
And it draws you in.
And we got to see a lot of really, really great things begin to take place almost immediately after coming back. Yeah. The other really neat thing is that large sum of money that they gave me to leave, I was able to do something that we would never have been able to do. And I took my wife and our kids and my mom, because we needed a babysitter, and we went and did a Disney, an 8 8 days at Disney.
Yeah, you just
and then did a,
disappeared and took a vacation.
and because of all that, we had one of the best experiences as a family we can have. So the big thing with that too, and I'm glad we did it because, we can look at that, our experience, hey, but look what we were able to do because of it. And so we've got maybe a bad memory for the kids, but they got a great memory to come out of that as well.
Right. The whole purpose of this podcast is listening to the stories, not to sit here and try to formalize really even healing moments or what a to-do podcast, but just hearing the story. I know pastors will identify with a lot of it. Church leaders will identify with a lot of the story. And through that, they will also identify with the healing moments. You're sitting at a coffee shop, pastor's just gone through it. What do you tell them?
The biggest thing is right now, just keep your eyes focused on God, on Jesus, on your relationship. I went through a period of time when, I don't even know that I definitely was not the best husband, best father, because I was so focused on that failure part.
Right.
And so there was a lot that I had to get through that. Having an understanding that if you follow God's leading, and he may take you to wherever, and just because it doesn't play out the way you think it should, does not mean it's a failure. And in my case, it took 5-6 years or so to see that process. It may take even longer than that. There are some people that may never see the full impact of what took place, but they're not failures. There are opportunities through there. Sometimes I believe God sends pastors, sends that under shepherd to a place. Sometimes it's as a last beacon of hope. And if they do not accept it, if they do not follow, it's not on the pastor's responsibility. That's the thing that I think we all have to figure it out is we are not responsible for how others receive the word that we give.
That goes back to the definition of success. What is success?
We are responsible for doing what God has called us to do.
Yeah, it's obedience.
I hate that God called me to do that. But
However,
like I said, I've asked God, make me a Daniel. And that means Daniel was stolen from his family, was given, a lot of, was in a horrible place in comparison to where he came from, lost everything through there. God promoted him and people continue to come after him. But he continued to stay faithful to God, and he was promoted through that.
Yeah.
Like you said, be careful what you pray for, because
For sure.
you might be pulled away and taken away from family. I was very fortunate. The fact that I had a place that I could come back to. What breaks my heart is the pastors that go through similar situations, turn in that resignation, and then have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Because there are churches that are more than willing to put pastors and their families, their small children, out into the street because someone is offended that it didn't go the way they think it should. That's pure evil.
For sure.
And that's what people are dealing with.
Yeah.
The biggest problem that I had with everything that had took place was when I was going through the process, I had my superintendent, I had my presbyters, I had people in leadership that were there giving me great counsel. And I followed their counsel, and it still turned out the way it did.
Yeah.
And then after, I had zero contact with them.
Wow.
I got probably one of the best letters of recommendation ever written.
But a little bit of contact of, hey, we still hear you.
But yes, hey.
You okay?
Because when it comes down to it, in our structure of leadership, if you will, I look towards that presbyter, I look towards that superintendent, those people in leadership over us. I look at them as my pastor. And all of a sudden now it felt like my pastor, I had no pastor. I had no one really to go. I did have my pastor now. He was there with me. And so I had someone like that.
Somebody, but.
And he's got the church hurt story. He's got a doozy of one too. But the fact that we've all got those, it's funny. When we went through our situation, my wife says, well, now I feel like we really are pastors because we have a story.
Yeah, we've been through it.
Because it seems like we all have that story. And, but to know that there just wasn't that leadership to really help. And when you hear the statistics of the amount of people in the pastoral ministry that leave the pastoral ministry every year, and you're like, how could this be? That's exactly how.
That's why.
because when they resign from their church, there is no follow-up. There is no connection afterwards, and how easy it is for them to just go and get a job selling insurance
or anything but.
or anything like that. Yeah.
Well, that's why we're telling the stories, is for pastors to identify with this and extract from it, from the telling of the story, things that they can do
Yeah.
or things that will spark healing in their lives as well. Nathan, it's always good to have you, man. Either lunch, coffee, or, formally sharing your story.
I'm glad you didn't make me cry or anything.
I mean,
This
you
wasn't
got
like a Barbara
it was.
Walters.
I was trying. I didn't lean in well
Yeah.
enough. I was going for it. But
I also
I'll have to do
appreciate
better
that you
next time.
didn't come with the typical counselor role. And say,
How's that? See, I've changed it. How's that working out for you? Well, this is Wounded Leadership, Stories from the Wounded. Nathan, thanks for sharing your story. If you're identifying with this, check us out at woundedleadership.com. You'll find resources to help you, links to other groups that are helping pastors. There's a growing movement of organizations that are helping pastors, because when we went through it, we didn't have anybody.
you got to have
that village that you can reach out to. So you'll find some of those connections on there. If you find yourself in the thick of it, we have a tab on there. If you need counseling, contact us here at Wounded Leadership Biblical Center, or Center for Biblical Counseling. We want to help you with that. And there's also a tab if you want to tell your story. You find healing in telling your story, you'll find that information. That's woundedleadership.com. Nathan, as always, friend, it's good to have you.
Love you, bud.
Thanks, bud. Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Wounded Leadership Podcast, Stories from the Wounded. We hope today's conversation has given you valuable insight into how vulnerability and resilience work to shape truly authentic leadership. Remember, our wounds don't define us. Every scar tells a story of survival, and every setback creates an opportunity for extraordinary growth. If today's episode resonated with you, please visit us at woundedleadership.com. where you're going to find resources, community forums, opportunities to share your own leadership journey. I also invite you to subscribe, rate, review this podcast on your favorite platform. Your support helps us to reach more leaders who might be struggling in silence. Till next time, this is Dr. Matthew Tanner reminding you that your wounds can become your greatest source of wisdom, connection, and strength. It's the Wounded Leadership Podcast, transforming wounds into wisdom, one story at a time.